Hey, my name is Megan. I'm a Canadian artist here on Vancouver Island, and I make short videos to help artists get started. Okay, let's get right into it. So I've got the colors set up here. I'm going to be just showing you my basic palette that I use for a lot of my live streams that I do, just to kind of simplify things. If you're just getting started and you want a basic color palette, it's what I started out with when I first started buying paints. And you go into the paint store and it's really confusing because there's just so many different pigments. First, I want to direct you towards the two little primary palettes I'm going to put up on the screen. One of them is the traditional one that you normally learn in elementary or primary school, which is the red, yellow, blue palette. That is the very basic color wheel that you'll learn. And then the other one is the CMYK palette, which is cyan, magenta, and yellow, and also black. I don't actually use black in mine, but this is what I base the palettes off of. The CMYK one is normally used in printer ink or for printers, but it's actually really great as a palette. It gives you a wider range of colors to play with, and that's why I have those on my palette as well. So you'll see some of those traditional ones, and then we've got a little bit of the CMYK palette as well. We'll go through each of the colors and I'll kind of explain what colors and why I chose them. Now, the white that I use, I'll start off with the white. This one is titanium white. It's kind of hard to see the label because I use this one so much. Definitely buy a big tube of the white. You'll go through more white. It helps to lighten a lot of the colors and play around with some of those lighter tones. So definitely a titanium white is good to have on your palette. I like titanium white because it is really thick in consistency, and its tinting strength is probably the best one you'll find. It's very common to use titanium white, so I kind of stuck with that when I first got started. And then our next color, I'm kind of just going in rainbow order, if you can tell. We've got quinacridone magenta. This would be part of the printer color wheel, which is the CMYK palette, and it makes really, really beautiful pinks. I got some of my artwork over here so I can show you. This is one that I did for the mini paint challenge a while back, and I really love the pinks that it makes. And it makes these pinky purples when you add blue into it. They're just so much more vibrant than this would be the traditional red. I use alizarin crimson for the red that I would use on a basic primary palette. So alizarin crimson is our next color. I like to explain this color as the black on my palette because this is the darkest color, along with this other color over here. We're going to go to the end. This one is ultramarine blue. Let me bring them a little closer so you can see. These two colors together make purple, and they make the most gorgeous purple that is perfect for the darker areas. So right here you can see in this painting, this is what I used as the black, which is more of a purpley tone. It really helps make your paintings a little bit more colorful instead of just using a black, because it dulls and muddies all of the other colors around it, especially when you're using oils. The colors will mix together. And so you want to be really careful with those darker colors. Editor Megan here. I totally forgot to add a color to the color palette, so we're just going to add it in right after the red. So we just talked about alizarin crimson. Now, cadmium red light is a color you for sure need on your palette, and I don't know why I forgot it because it's such an important color. I love, love, love using it, especially for red things. I'm just grabbing a painting here. This painting, I definitely used cadmium red. As you can see, I used a bit of the alizarin crimson in those darker areas, but the lighter areas, you want a brighter red. I find that this red works really well to kind of have a slightly more saturated, and you just can't get it when you mix yellow and the red together, because you would assume that it's closer to that orangish color, but it's really not. There's just something about it that is super handy for those really bright areas, especially when you're doing something like an apple where it's got those very bright highlights. And then another painting I used it with, let me look over here. I definitely used it in these peaches here. You can see in some of these areas here where the oranges are, it really brightens up some of those areas. So definitely don't forget to add it. Like I just forgot to add it to the video. And then the next color we've got is cadmium yellow or cadmium yellow light. These are pretty much the same. I just am almost done this and they only had cadmium yellow when I was traveling. I find yellow is one of the most important. I should actually buy a bigger tube of that because I go through a lot of yellow. I use it in paintings a lot of the time to lighten certain colors, especially when you're doing something orange. It's great to use alizarin crimson alongside the cadmium yellow. And you can kind of see I can get a really nice fade if I mix a bunch of transition colors with that. And it's just so nice and pigmented. It's got a really nice consistency too. You don't have to add any mediums or anything. When I'm painting, I specifically just like using, I just have a little jar of linseed oil. I actually have a video of how I paint solvent free. So if you guys want to check that out and you want to learn oil painting, but you're a little scared of solvents, I'm also scared of solvents and I don't like solvent. I avoid them at all costs. I have a whole video about how I solvent-free oil paint and cleaning your paintbrushes solvent-free. And then our next color, which actually is the only secondary color that I like to keep on my palette. It is this really beautiful green. It's called sap green. There it is right there. It is made up of Indian yellow and phthalo blue and a few other pigments that I don't know the SKUs of, but it is a mixed one and it's really nice to have, especially if you like doing landscapes. It's just a really handy one to have for those darker kind of greens, and it looks so beautiful if you just mix it with a little of the cadmium. Let me see. I have this one over here. I did this one last year. This was actually part of the mini paint challenge that I host live on here. So you could paint this with me if you want. And I used the sap green for a lot of these darker areas. And it just has such a beautiful kind of like greenish blue in there. And then our next color here, this one is cerulean blue. Now this is part of the CMYK palette. It would be considered the cyan color in the CMYK palette. And it is so necessary to a palette. I would not make a palette without this color. It is such a beautiful blue. You cannot get this bright of a blue any other way unless you buy a cyan like that. Like this ultramarine blue just is never going to get that beautiful and bright. So you definitely need a cerulean. Like you can see in this one, this is more of the ultramarine blue mixed with a little bit of that alizarin crimson for the dark area. And this is the nice blue you'll get. And all I did to get this was mix the cerulean with a little bit of titanium white. And it's just so nice and bright, and it really adds so much vibrancy to your blues. I like to also use it, I don't know if you can see, in some of the highlight areas, they're actually a bit blue. And so I mixed the very small, you don't need a lot of this paint. This paint will probably last me a really long time because the cerulean blue is very, very pigmented. It's one of the more expensive pigments, but it's worth it because you don't need as much and it will last you quite a while. I mean, I also do mini paintings, so my paint just lasts a lot longer that way. But it is a great color to have. I also have it, I guess I used it in this one as well. This little one. This one's part of the mini paint challenge as well. So you could paint along with me if you want to do this one. It's a cute little donut. And I used that darker blue there, and then that's the cerulean blue around the edges. And you can see in some of the little marshmallows, the bluish white that I used in the highlight areas there. It just adds so much vibrancy. So make sure you for sure get that one for your palette. And then the last one, I've picked up ultramarine blue a few times already, but that is a favorite for sure. I love using it in darker areas with the alizarin crimson, and it just makes such a beautiful purple. This is actually not black, and it's got that purplish tint to it, if you can see it. I'm trying to get it in the light there so you can see it a bit better. But that is what the ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson mixed together. It just makes such a pretty purple, and then it makes your darker areas stand out a little bit more. It gives them a bit more vibrancy and color. That, I guess, is my basic palette. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them down below. And I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe if you found this short video helpful. Until next time, keep creating and stay true to yourself.